Hello, everyone, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Yeah. We are back. Another distributed tea time. I'm Aydrian Howard, developer
And
advocate at Cockroach Labs.
I'm sorry, and I'm Rob Reed, technical evangelist at Cockroach Labs.
Yeah. So, let's see. Today,
Today, like, do you want to do? Look at
d-
us. Oh,
look
we're
at
getting
us. Yeah.
cute now. We're starting to trip over each other. Today, we'll be
Yeah.
talking about migrations and specifically zero downtime migrations to
Absolutely.
CockroachDB.
hmm Uh,
It's possible.
it's possible. Yeah. So, today we're talking about migrating from like a legacy Postgres instance, right,
Yep.
to CockroachDB.
Yep.
Um,
It's all super canned. Like
mhm.
they're both Docker images that are running on my machine. It is the latest version of Postgres. That's irrelevant, but yeah, we're
Yep.
migrating from something to CockroachDB. There's something just happens in this case to be Postgres.
Right. So at the end, when we go over the steps, they're going to be the same depending on whatever database you come to. If you're going from like a document database to our database, it's going to be probably a little different. But for relational to relational, these steps will probably help you out. Um, do you have any experience moving to CockroachDB?
So I have experience in planning to move to Cockroach.
Okay.
So when I was at Lush, we migrated workloads from Spanner to CockroachDB
Okay.
for things like orders. I think orders was the first workload, but more have followed. Um, Actually performing them, no.
No.
But getting everything ready for them, yes. Yeah.
So when you
And
were
there is
planning
a lot
it,
of work.
oh,
Mm,
sorry. I was like, when you were planning it, like, what was your biggest concern? I guess
downtime. I
downtime.
think I think if you well, two things: downtime and data corruption. They were
hmm
my biggest fears. I think if you can plan to the nth degree for something, but as you'll see, like even the example that I'm showing is open to a particular issue, and I'll talk about it. But yeah, we went with a very well, the design was very conservative. We didn't want anything to potentially go wrong, and that's what you'll see in this demo. It's a very orchestrated approach, and there are more moving parts because of that. I think if we
hmm
were to remove those moving parts and go as a big bang, then that might be completely fine. Like I think it really depends on your risk appetite. My
Yeah.
risk appetite was fairly high. No, low,
So
low. I had a low appetite for risk.
risk averse.
I was very risk averse, and I am, as a person, very risk averse.
Yeah.
So for me, having something like this, like you're going to see, made me feel a bit more secure than just simply pulling out a cable and plugging it in somewhere else and hoping for the best.
Yeah. So at Lush, what did downtime mean? Like what was the big thing about downtime?
So the order service powered both sales online
hmm
and sales, so that's through the Lush website,
Right.
and also till transactions. So if the order service went down, so did the tills and so did the website. So it's
So
very critical. I
very
think people
costly.
refer, yeah, very
Yeah.
very costly, and we experienced downtimes through no fault of our own, third parties, etc. But everyone likes to blame third parties, but in this case it was,
hmm
and they can be really costly. So
Yeah.
everyone strives to avoid downtimes. That's why CockroachDB was developed, so that there was a distributed SQL database that could survive these kind of downtimes. But humans always will get in the way, and
Yeah.
I'd imagine most downtimes are caused by humans in some respect.
Did you have any idea of like how many transactions a day like you did? So like if you're
I
like because like every second counts, right? So like even 10 minutes of downtime is a large amount of money, right?
I do know.
Oh.
I don't know if Lush would be happy for me to share.
Yeah. But it was big, right?
It was big enough that we didn't want downtime.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, let's get started. So,
yeah.
uh, Planner Rob, tell us how you would go about migrating this Postgres database to CockroachDB.
Sure. Do you want to switch over to my thank you? So
hmm
this is again caveat. This is the way that I'm doing it for this demo. There are many ways you can do it. There are many different databases you can migrate between. I've chosen Postgres to Cockroach, and I've chosen to do it in this way because this is the way I feel comfortable in doing it.
Okay.
It is open to issue though. So I'll get started. I'm going to create a Postgres database. I'm just using make file targets in the background. That's all they resolve to. So if I do make Postgres, see that I start my Docker container, and if I do Postgres create, I create a table. Then if I do Postgres shell, I'll shell in there, and if I do select star from products, if I do the same for Cockroach, and shell select from product, but very products as well. So we're in a good position to start the test.
So they both have a table called product with the same schema.
They do.
Okay.
They do. Yep. And I can show you that actually. If I show you, they get created from the same script. So create a database called store, and then in there create a table called product, which has an ID, a name, and a created at value. Very simple stuff. But this isn't a complicated migration scenario.
Yeah.
So there are two services that are involved in this. There's an API service and there's a toggle service. Now the API service is what my fictional users will be hitting when they're making requests for data. They'll be either adding products into the table or they'll be selecting products out of the table. I think there's about a 10-to-1 ratio of reads to writes respectively. So for every 1,000 reads we make, we insert about 10 products. And the toggle service, I'll go through them both now.
Sure.
So this is the API API service. It's quite simple. There's quite a lot of code, but anyone who's done migrations in the past would think, well, you've already got both connection strings in here. Like the migration's probably already done. It's not. The database will still be very much driven by, well, the app will be driven by Postgres, but you could add, let's say your application was orchestrated by something like Kubernetes. You could make small changes to add in the toggle service, add in CockroachDB or whatever you want via rolling deployments that don't cause any downtime at all. So this is just to assume that we've done those deployments because no one wants to watch me coding like rampantly for 20 odd minutes. So we've got to the point where all the code is there. We just have to do the actual migration.
And so this toggle service just allows you to programmatically switch between databases.
Exactly. Yep. So this is the application. I'll show you the toggle service in a minute, but it does reference it. And essentially all it is an HTTP service in the same way that this is just an HTTP service. So I've got two endpoints, one to get products and one to add products. The get endpoint will say, am I migrated for reads? Should I read from Cockroach? If so, set my database to Cockroach, increment the number of Cockroach reads by 1 so we can just print out how many reads we've made to Cockroach, or default back to Postgres, increment the number of reads from Postgres, and then fetch the products using the database that we've selected as part of that decision. The add is a little different, so we can write to both databases, and this is where the problem comes in. This is called the dual write problem. So I create a product, I parse it from the JSON body. I do that once. I create one ID and one created app, so they're both identical in both databases. If I'm toggled on for Postgres writes, I write to Postgres. If I'm toggled on for Cockroach writes, I write to Cockroach. Aydrian, any ideas what could go wrong?
I feel like there could be some kind of syncing issue, like in the milliseconds maybe.
So it's not necessarily syncing, but you're on the right track. The databases could get out of sync. Let's say, for example, I made my write to Postgres and the app crashed here. I haven't written to Cockroach. The databases would then be out of sync from that perspective. Or let's say it was the other way around, or we were doing these in two asynchronous Go routines. If I wrote to one database but didn't write to the other, we're in a weird state. So that can be resolved with something like event sourcing. So if instead of writing directly to the database, you were to write to something like Kafka and then have two consumers going from there, you could ensure that you're always going to get a guaranteed number of requests to both databases. If Cockroach goes down or if Postgres goes down, when it comes back up again, it will continue reading where it left off from that Kafka event log.
And you would only need to use the Kafka during the migration process, like as part of the toggle.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is and this all depends on, again, your risk appetite. If your risk appetite says I'm happy taking the risk of the dual write problem, then if you're working with a very small database, that might make a lot of sense. If you're working with a ginormous database that's much bigger than this example, then maybe it's a concern for you. And then I've just got, I'm not going to go through this, but I've got a loop that prints out information that shows how many reads and writes I've made to both databases. And I fetch the toggle based on an HTTP request to the toggle service, which looks like this. So this is a bit simpler. I'm using tview, which is a library for a framework for Go for creating console-based CLI applications. I have 3 checkboxes, one that enables cockroach writes, defaulted to false, one that enables Postgres writes, defaulted to true, so we are already writing to Postgres, and one that enables cockroach reads, which is defaulted to false, i.e. Postgres is currently the default for reads as well. So that's pretty much the long and short of that. Okay. I can start the toggle service. So there's the checkboxes. I can go through them. So you can see that cockroach writes is off, Postgres writes is on, and cockroach reads is off, i.e. Postgres reads are on. Okay. The API service. So this is the service that's going to allow people to make requests. We're not getting any at the moment. And then I'm going to simulate some users. So let's have a look at what that looks like. That's in load. So I've got my read users, which runs at, now I can't remember what this meant now, but a bunch of times. But it's kind of jagged. So it's not reliably a specific duration of time elapsed between requests. Okay. I generate a random, in here I just fetch a bunch of products. And in here I generate a random product. So I create a fake product, which just creates a random product with a random name of, is it 10 in length? Can't remember, but it generates a random product. Yeah. So I'll start that, and then you'll start to see against Postgres, we're making some requests now. I'm just going to have
a lot of requests. Yeah, no worries.
So this is to simulate load on the system. This is all going to one endpoint, so it's not perfect, but it's a start. So we're making requests.
Would you say that this is like a heavy load or a medium load that you've kind of simulated?
It depends on the business. This might be a heavy load for business A, but a very small workload for business B. We see customers with in the order of hundreds of thousands of requests a second. So in the grand scheme of things, this is very small.
Yeah, I just can't think that big, apparently.
Right. So we're in this stage, the pre-migration stage. We've got our API service, which is currently being hit, and it's reading from and writing to Postgres. The next step will be we toggle on writing to Cockroach, so it's kind of in a semi-alive state. The next step would be we need to backfill data, and we'll do that in a minute. So any data that we don't have in Cockroach that we do have in Postgres prior to the migration starting. Then we start reading from Cockroach. So essentially this becomes our primary database now. We would only want to turn on reading from Cockroach once all of the data from Postgres has been migrated. Otherwise we're going to potentially miss data that was in there from the before time. Right. And finally we can turn Postgres off. So that is it. We'll get onto the migration demo now. So we're writing nicely here. And now I'm going to enable cockroach writes. So you can see that we're writing to Postgres now and to Cockroach. They're both getting data at the same rate. So now I'm going to have a first row in Cockroach from which before then I don't have any data. I'm missing data. Right. So I'll query for that data now. So if I connect to Cockroach again, I do select ID from product. I created that. That'll give me the ID of the first thing that I'm aware of. Before that, I'm not aware of. So let's hop into and select the created at time product, where the ID is equal to this. So this is the timestamp. This is what we're looking for. I want to be able to get everything from before this timestamp.
Great.
Make sense?
Yes. Makes sense to me.
So what I'm going to do, I wrote an application to do just that. I wouldn't recommend anyone use this in production because I'm the only person who's tested it. It's in GitHub. It has 1 star. And that star is me. No, it doesn't have any stars actually. But if I
Yeah.
show you, called DS, and it's basically data shift. You point it at two databases, and it will get data from one and put it into the other. Quite straightforward. The config for this particular, so you'll throw a YAML file at the application, and it will figure the rest out. So this is my source. I'm using the PGX driver, which is essentially a Postgres driver for Go. I connect to the database. The tables that I want to migrate, you can do multiple, but this one is just going to be product. The primary key is ID. I want to be able to read 1,000 requests or 1,000 rows at a time. So it's going to be chunked. So I'm not just trying to read the whole thing into memory, where the created at is less than the value that I just pasted in. And I think I just pasted it in. Let me just double check. Yes.
Yes.
I'll be taking out the ID, name, and created at, and I'll be inserting them into the target database, which is Cockroach, into the product table, whose primary key is that, where the columns are this. So let's do that. Go with DS, insert, and again, don't hold me accountable if anything goes wrong in production if you try to use this tool.
MIT license, right?
Now look over here now at Cockroach. Now the two are in sync. So all of the data that we didn't have in Postgres before, we do have in Cockroach. Sorry, we didn't have in Cockroach now. We have now. So they're both in sync now.
And that was
so
quick.
That is, it was, yeah. Thank you. So now I can enable Cockroach reads, because now essentially this is the primary database. So the number of reads from Postgres has dropped off. No more reads. And then I can disable Postgres writes. So now everything is going through Cockroach, and Postgres has come to a complete standstill. There's nothing going through Postgres anymore. The migration is complete.
Quick question from the chat. It says, with Kafka, you can copy the data from Postgres to Cockroach at X time, do the write copy to get real-time updates at Y, and then use replay and copy to get everything between X and Y. I guess it wasn't a question, more of a statement.
Yeah, and that is CDC, essentially. Yeah, change data capture. We do have tools available. Again, they're not production grade, but they are. We have clients that are using them. Essentially, it's called CDC Sync. Again, it's a use at your own peril kind of tool, but it uses exactly that. It will connect into Postgres or MySQL or a bunch of other databases, including document databases. And listen out for live changes, so you can do it like that as well. Yeah, but there are other off-the-shelf products as well. There's Click Replicate, there's Stream with 2 I's, and there's AWS DMS, Data Migration Service. So there's a bunch of tools that you can use for exactly this purpose, and they've all been tested more than my little tool. But I just wanted to get a feel. I just wanted to get a feel for what was involved.
Yeah.
There's actually one last command I want to run, and it's called molt verify. So it's part of the CockroachDB molt migrate off legacy technology toolset. So this is going to talk to the source database Postgres and the target database Cockroach. There's no reason why that's Postgres SQL. That's just a typo. I'm going to disable warnings because I don't care about seeing those. But what you will see is the summary. So it's seen 11,456 rows because that's how many there are in Postgres. There are no missing rows. There are no mismatch rows, but there are 5,151 extraneous rows, i.e. rows in Cockroach that don't exist in Postgres. And if I run that again, I would expect that to go up. And that's going to carry on going up. But extraneous rows in this instance are perfectly fine. And that is the end of the demo. We're on Cockroach now.
Awesome. So do you want to quickly recap kind of the high-level steps that we are doing?
Sure, yeah. So let me go back to my Prezzo.
Yeah.
And this is just one way of doing it.
So first we want to get our CockroachDB schema set up based on the current.
Exactly. First, create the schema, and you can do that with Molt as well. You can use that. There's a schema migration tool built into Cockroach Cloud, so you can give it a schema dump from MySQL or whatever database you have. It will figure out what that the Cockroach equivalent is and any issues involved. So, for example, if you had a trigger in Postgres, CockroachDB doesn't yet support triggers, so it would flag that up as something that's not yet supported, and you can just click through and say, "Yep, I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that." Then you've got your SQL script that you can run against Cockroach. I just had exactly the same table, and my table was a single table, so I just created the table.
Sure.
I think Molt was overkill, or the schema migration was overkill for this particular one table. Then I made the application aware of Cockroach, so that can be done as a rolling update. You can connect to a brand new database that doesn't have any data in it, that's not being used or anything like that. That was the next step. Then I created a toggle service that allowed me, and I wouldn't recommend using a hand-rolled toggle service either. Like, there are plenty of very good off-the-shelf tools for that as well. Like Launch Darkly, for example, is a fantastic tool for doing exactly this. But that's a solved problem. But again, I wanted the excitement, if you will, of creating my own toggle service. Very exciting. So essentially, there is an invisible node up here, which is the toggle service. So request comes in, and user, I suppose. Request comes in, goes to the toggle service, and then goes to either of the databases or both databases, depending on the outcome of that toggle. Okay. So then we start writing to Cockroach, and it's important that we start writing to Cockroach before we start reading from it, because we don't have any data in there yet. And if I did the bulk migration first, I wouldn't have any data after that, and so I would have my data. The databases would be out of sync, so I can't use CockroachDB as the golden source of read data until it's up to date. So start writing to it to get all up-to-date data, and that's what the person on the call said. Like, if you start to stream data from Postgres using something like CDC, this will do exactly the same. And this is exactly what AWS DMS does. This is exactly what CDC Sync does. Then I backfilled the data. So before I can call Cockroach my golden source of truth, my source of truth. Yes. I need to make sure that all of the data from the past is there as well, and this could be a huge step. But there could be tens of terabytes in there. But
yeah, so you could be running in parallel for a while, right? The parallel writes. Yeah,
exactly. And then finally, I toggle on reads. So at this point, Cockroach becomes my source of truth, and Postgres, while it's getting the writes, and we can still potentially do some reconciliation if we wanted to, it's in a position where we could just turn it off.
Nice. Oh, you didn't do the I know you had like the little thing where you were showing that if you turned off CockroachDB, the API crashed.
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah. Let me. I'll kill them both. This is the end of the demo, so I'm not gonna. It's not gonna recover from this. So So if any of the databases go away, everything is very unhappy. So it wasn't a case of like I simulated success constantly. Like, it would have failed if it had gone wrong.
Yeah. So I thought that was a nice way of showing that it was definitely going from the other end, because on the toggle service you had already toggled off the Postgres, right?
I toggled Postgres off. So essentially it had become what Cockroach was at the start of the demo. There was still a connection to the database because the database still existed, but as part of maybe the next release that gets rolled out, we remove that Postgres connection and database connection, and then we can safely remove the Postgres. Because I was going to demo deleting the Postgres Docker container earlier, and then it all just blew up, and it's because like it still had a connection to the database. The database was still there; it just wasn't being used.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So because the application hadn't actually been restarted. Like
not restarted. I see what you mean. Yeah, the connection hadn't been disposed, there was still a live, valid connection to Postgres.
So even though the database has now been migrated and it's being used, there might be some follow-up things that like the development team needs to do to the overall application, and
but
that could be part
operations.
Huh?
They're very safe operations. That would essentially be the case of going into the application, which is here in my case, and just removing any mention of Postgres. You could also, in this case, remove the toggle service, but I'm guessing if you're using a toggle service already, you've probably got other things behind toggles. But yeah, then it just becomes a case of just cleaning up your code.
Yeah, and that's just part of like the regular code release cycle, which I'm guessing is going to cause no downtime as well.
Exactly. Yeah, you'd remove this. Deploy a change via your orchestration preference. I guess Kubernetes is kind of already one, so I say that, but I mean Kubernetes. And deploy it, rolls out, everyone's happy.
Nice.
Any other questions from the call?
Yeah, we're happy to take questions. We got done Well, we got through the demo really early.
We did. I should have spoken a bit slower.
We just get so excited about how.
Oh, I just love migrations so much.
And no downtime. I mean,
don't. You get me excited.
Okay. So if you like this and you want the 3-minute version, Rob is working on a video that hopefully will be released soon. We'll make sure to add that to the description, or if you follow CockroachDB on any of the socials, just look for CockroachDB on any of the socials and you'll probably find us. So you'll see when that comes out. What do we got? The hard resistance part is the code migration from using int serial to UUID. Do you want to speak on that?
That's a really good point. And I don't have a good answer for it, but essentially the question is, the serial data type is a 64-bit, I think, integer, which we also support, but I think largely because of backwards compatibility, because it kind of result in hot ranges in CockroachDB. And I've done a video on hot ranges, and that will be out soon. But yeah, you'll need some way of translating. So perhaps, I know that the online schema change tool, the schema change or migration tool, does allow you to say, if you see a serial type, how do you want to treat it? I'm not sure what that does. But one way around it is you could create a nullable nullable UUID column, set it to be defaulted to gen random UUID. Then when you import your data, that column would get filled, but then that wouldn't solve the problem of any relational data that you've got. So that might be a really interesting one to do a video on. Let me write it down because
it's going on the board.
It's going on the board. It's serious and it goes on the board. So I'll do Postgres migration, and then specifically in relation to serial to UUID.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, and I'm sorry I can't answer it right now, but I will answer it in due course.
Yeah. No, he loves any reason to do another video.
I love a good video.
Let's see. He says, at my work we use MySQL and we need to scale up soon. If we go Spanner, we have to go touch everything. If we go CockroachDB, we still have to go touch everything.
Not necessarily in either case, I don't think. So depends on the language you're using and the way your drivers are set up. But if your code is written in such a way that if you've got raw SQL in there and you're passing args via the MySQL, I think is it %sign or $sign? There's a placeholder character that is used to say here's an argument, and if you're using that, yes, that you'll have to change that, because in Postgres and Cockroach there's we use $1, $2, $3 to denote the position of the arguments that you're passing in, so you would have to change it there. If you're using an ORM, it would do a lot of that for you, but without knowing the ins and outs of how you're using it, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, he says we do raw SQL everywhere.
Yeah, and so did I in a lot of the places I've worked. I treat SQL as code, so I like to see SQL alongside my code. Yeah, it might be a bit of an upheaval, but I've done that as well. So a migration from MySQL to Cockroach, and I wrote a helper function that would, instead of saying, so I replaced all of my, is it %? I can't remember, all of the MySQL placeholders. I could just say, like, give me my next Postgres compatible placeholder, give me my next Cockroach placeholder. And every time I called it, I got a $1, $2, $3. And that worked for single row DML, multi-row DML, you have it, you name it. So if that would be helpful for me to share with you, I'd be happy to. Hopefully you'd still have to touch everywhere in the code, but maybe a bit less and might smoothen things out for you. But best of luck with your migration. How close are you to to being at capacity with your MySQL instance?
He also said that they're using TypeScript and all IDs are ints.
It's the plot thickens. So yeah, that's so I guess that's the kind of previous serial. Is it the same person?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah.
But not impossible. Not impossible. We were using int types in MySQL, and we moved over to UUIDs, so it is possible. And I'll show you how to do that part of it in a video, and maybe a blog post or something. I can't imagine it being too difficult, he says. But yeah, the changing
famous
the code
last
everywhere,
words.
that might be a good other video as well. I'll do another video on migrating code in SQL.
Hmm.
Sorry, won't be a sec.
No, don't worry. And just a quick plug, we will be at Google Cloud Next. We won't, but our team will be. So if you're at Google Cloud Next, look for the CockroachDB booth. Go by, get your badge scanned, donate $3 to a charity, and grab a button sticker or whatever, and talk to some of our.
We donate on your behalf.
Yes.
Yes. You don't have to do the donation. Cockroach do the donation on your behalf.
I have to explain that all the time. They're like, no, it's okay. And I was like, no, we give the money. You just have to tell us where and put a peg in the light bright. So.
It's a very cool concept. It's a really nice concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, I guess we'd give everyone their time back.
I know. Wow. We'll end early today.
32.5 minutes.
Yeah. So I guess join us in 2 weeks. I should look these dates up ahead of time. It's going to be September 8th. We're still coming up with a topic, but if there's something that we might have one. Rob's been busy.
No, we've done it together, I think.
Oh, we did? Oh, I have no memory of anything. But if there's a topic that you'd like to see us cover live, please, you can either drop it in the comments or tweet it out with the hashtag distributed tea time, and we will pick that up. But we would love to get some topics from the community. But otherwise, we'll come up with something, and we will be here in 2 weeks.
Oh wow, it's asking me to do all my single sign-on. You know the thing you just had to do.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
my single sign-on.
It's that time.
I'm just going to do it because I will do it. I will make people wait because if I find the topic, it might be interesting to share.
Ooh. Preview. Yeah, what is it? We have to do this like every 2 weeks. We have to like
we were talking about doing a full text search thing.
Oh,
remember you were doing your hero search.
That's
and
correct.
You were wondering what text indexes we could apply in the background, from trigram indexes to all the way up to, well, we could do like indexes, we can do no indexes, and we can do a full text search index in Cockroach and see how that performs.
Yeah, great. Yeah, because I wrote a little combo search box. So you'll get to see kind of the front end part and then how we would do it in CockroachDB and optimize it in the back end. Yeah.
But feedback on the ideas, like any new ideas that you'd like to see, any ideas that like that idea that we've just proposed, let us know if you like them. Let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see, because you can help us determine the future of this live stream.
Yeah, we're here for you. But yeah, so
have lovely weekends, everyone.
Yeah, and I gotta find the button to end the stream. But yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for the questions. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Until then, TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
Ta-ta for now. Take care, everyone. Thanks.